This lesson is the first of our Mixolydian mode lessons. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about scale construction, what the mode is, the difference between this and a major scale mode, a little bit about soloing and how to use it. The next lesson after this one, we're going to get into a lot of things that I really like to do with the Mixolydian mode. To me, the Mixolydian mode by itself is a little boring, so in the next lesson, once we've learned the basics of this, we're actually going to talk about chromatic enhancements to it, using or superimposing triads, and a lot of the things that I really like to do to make it exciting. But before we get there, you actually have to learn the scale. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the scale construction. We have a printable PDF in the video description down below. There's also a link to a backing track that I'm going to be playing over as part of the example. And that's pretty much it. Let's get started. We're going to be working in the A Mixolydian scale. In the packet, I start off showing you the difference between the C major and the C Mixolydian scales there. And the reason for that is because C major has just all natural notes. So you can look at that and you see where we just put the one flat on the seventh note, we lower it a half step, and then we get that C Mixolydian sound. Right? So the big thing is, if you remember from our other caged lessons, where the half steps are kind of the important thing to defining these scale sounds. So between the third and fourth notes, and the sixth and the seventh notes are where the half steps are in a Mixolydian scale. The seventh note of the scale, now because we've lowered it a half step, is now called the minor 7. So we're going to go root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, and then root. If we go down here to A, and this is where we're going to be starting most of our lesson, we go root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 for the major scale and then root. But if we're doing Mixolydian, root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, and then root. Seems silly to spend a lot of time on this little distinction, but it really helps in the long run. Once my students realize that the majority of this is a major scale, it helps because you've learned all of those scales before. The first scale we're going to learn, or the first scale pattern, is going to be the A Mixolydian in the E root pattern from the cage system. We start here on the root. We go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, and there's the 2. We always practice these scales by starting and ending on the root because that's part of how you get the sound in it. Because this is the fifth note or the fifth mode of the D major, I mean, honestly, if you started the same group of notes on D, it would sound like a major scale. So it's important that you identify this as being in A. And one of the things that helps do that is actually knowing where the A dominant seventh or A7 arpeggio is within this. If we take the root, the third, the fifth, and the minor seventh out of these scale patterns, we actually get the parent chord. Right? And then all of the other notes, when you're improvising, are kind of notes that give you a little bit of tension to build your phrases. We're going to play a little bit over this from the backing track. If I play the A, that's static. If I play the C sharp, which is the third, the fifth, or the minor 7, it just doesn't want to go anywhere. But if I play another note, like if I play the second, it feels better when I go down to the root. If I play the second, go to the third, that feels good. Go on the 4. The 4 wants to go down to the 3. So if I play a phrase, you feel how it finally ends when I hit a chord jump. That's 2 to 3, 2, 1. 2 doesn't really want to sit there very long. To me, the Mixolydian mode is probably the most boring mode to play over by itself. It really is. All right, so we start looking for things that help it make sense. And one of them is making sure that you know where that arpeggio is within each of these scale patterns. We're only going to go through 1 or 2 scale patterns in this lesson, but the PDF, and there's a link to the printable PDF down below, has all of the 5 caged root patterns and then a few of the combination patterns we're going to talk about here in just a second. That was Mixolydian in the E pattern. If I come up here to the next root pattern up, which would be D in the cage system, we have root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go back down because I got to get the other notes lower than the root. 3, 2, root, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, root, minor 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I'm going to go back up to the root. 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, and then the root. Doing that just helps define it in your ear that that's the root, and that becomes really important when you're playing ideas and you want them to make sense. Now, in this one, you could make sure that you've got the A7 arpeggio, right? But one of the things that I like to be able to do is, like I was saying before, is travel on the diagonal with this stuff. So here is a composite of this pattern and the pattern we just did. So it's the E pattern engaged in the D. And you're going to see that there are duplication of notes in places. You got the 3rd and 4th notes on the 5th string. You've got them on the 6th string and so on. One of the easiest ways to conquer this is just do 3 notes per string and go up the scale. Root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, 2, 3, 4. One of the reasons why I didn't just write out just a pure 3-note per string scale is because it really helps if you can start identifying where all of the notes duplicate all over the place. Sometimes you're going to want to be playing here. You don't really know exactly how you want to get from place to place, and that 3-note per string scale is helpful. Like if I'm trying to play, faster stuff, and it's good to help visualize. But sometimes it's not the best way for me musically. Everyone's got a different way of looking at this stuff. So I'm thinking that maybe if we looked at both these scales in their entirety, and you can pick your own path through them, that would help. But being able to play any phrase where you're not stuck in one vertical silo or one vertical pattern, I think is really, really important. So this scale is really just a primer on the Mixolydian sound. We only went over one position, or like 1.5 really. Take the PDF, learn all of the scale patterns. Next lesson, we're actually going to be doing all of the fun stuff I started doing towards the end of the demo lesson, where I'm playing chromaticism, I'm playing thirds, I'm playing sixths, I'm playing chromatic embellishments to chord tones, I'm superimposing other chords. There's a whole language. But before we can do that, you really should learn your scales, get them under your fingertips. Like we've been doing every week, there's going to be live lesson Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the channel. If you have questions about this lesson, hit me up there. If it's after that date, you can always go back and kind of see what people have asked. And every week, every Wednesday, we've got a live stream lesson here on the channel. So if you have questions about any of these lessons, feel free to pop in and ask.